Welcome back from lunch, everyone, and welcome, Pan Hermansson, the CEO of Suturion. The stage is yours.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I hope you enjoyed your lunch and that you're fully energized for this afternoon. My name is Pan Hermansson. I'm the CEO of Suturion. And thanks for this opportunity. Thank you, BioStock, to present our business case. Every year, 30 million patients will undergo open abdominal surgery. Unfortunately, every third patient will have some type of complication in relation to the closure of the abdominal wall. And those complications are like incisional hernia, infections, but also burst abdomen, where the abdomen is totally open. And the reason why we see so high number of complications and so high number of procedures is the wide range of surgical specialties operating in the abdominal cavity. But also the range of surgical procedures like C-sections, hysterectomies, trauma, emergency, and cancer procedures. So you have a wide range of surgical doctors performing these type of procedures, with little focus on the closure of the abdominal wall, which results in the higher number of complications and the impact on quality of life. Many of these patients will have to undergo one more surgical procedure to correct the complication they have experienced. And even in some cases, mortality occurs. The cost for society is a staggering 90 billion Swedish kronor in direct and indirect cost in relation to these complications. The main reason why we have these complications is the challenge surgeons experience when closing the abdominal wall. On the left-hand side, you see what is called the long stitch technique, which is basically putting the stitches with about 10 millimeters apart from each other, or even more. This is not enough to ensure adequate healing. What they should be doing is a technique that is called the small bite technique, where you put the stitches very, very close to each other, about 5 millimeters, to ensure proper healing of the abdominal wall. And this has been confirmed and validated in several clinical trials, randomized larger trials. So there's no controversy in the fact that the small bite technique is the best one. However, it is challenging. It requires a lot of suturing technique, it's tedious, and it's time-consuming. And that's why some surgeons are sloppy, basically, and do the long stitch technique. And this is why Suturion has developed this unique single-use device to enable surgeons apply this short bite technique. This device enables high-quality closure, standardized manner, time-saving, and it's very easy to use, and it also reduces the risk of sharp injuries for the hospital staff. The value proposition that Suturion has developed means for patients a reduction of the risk of complications with more than 50%. For surgeons, it means that we enable surgeons to do the right technique and follow the clinical guidelines by the European Hernia Society and the American Hernia Society. We reduce the time it takes to close the abdominal wall with up to 85%. And we also enable surgeons to do what is called task shifting, that they can allow younger surgeons to do this type of technique. For the healthcare system, it means a significant cost saving. Every time they use the device, there's a cost saving of 13,000 Swedish kronor, which has been validated in our health economic model. Suturion has identified this massive opportunity. There's no device on the market today to help surgeons perform this challenging surgical step. The opportunity we have identified is 90 billion Swedish kronor. However, we will target a selected number of geographies in Europe, Middle East, and the US, which means a market opportunity of close to 30 billion Swedish kronor. And in those numbers, we haven't included the C-sections. We will do that in a later phase. The device that has been tested and validated in several preclinical trials that are also published, confirms what I've just been saying. But we've also done a large number of voice of customer events. And this is one event that we did in August this year, where 29 colorectal surgeons got the opportunity to try the device. And I want to highlight the statement that we have, I might use the device in clinical practice, where the median answer was 8 on a scale from 0 to 10. So very, very strong positive feedback. And I, this morning, came back from the US. I managed to get a few hours of sleep, where the American College of Surgery has been going in Boston. And we did a workshop there as well, with even stronger results than you see here on this sheet. We will launch and commercialize in next year and start generating revenue. And by 2028, we will reach a market penetration of close to 3%, which will generate a revenue of 255 million Swedish. The unit cost next year will be close to 1,000 Swedish. But in 2026, it will be more in the range of 600, which will be a gross profit of 80%. When we launch next year, we will focus on the US and the Nordics in the first phase, and then we will move over to Benelux, the UK, and the Middle East. And then the third step will be the remaining EU countries. The go-to-market model will be that we will have a direct sales force in the Nordics, and we want to have that because we want to be close to our home market, but we also want to support and help our partners and distributors in the rest of the EU and the US with our small sales team in the Nordics. Our achievements and plans so far is that up until 2023, and during 2023, the focus has been to start, support, and finalize the clinical trial that will close in a few weeks. It's a single arm in Helsingborg. We have been, during 2023, we've also been granted STEP status by the FDA, which means it's safe technology program equal to the breakthrough technology. So we will have a prioritized and expedited pathway through the regulatory process. During 2023, we're also doing our third financing round, and 2024 and 2025 is all about commercializing and driving sales and growth. And in 2025, we will also expand the indication for use to skin. Yes, so far, Suturion has raised about 40 million Swedish kronor in equity and soft funding to take us through the R&D phase, the clinical and pre-market phase. Now we are raising 60 million Swedish to take us through the commercial phase, to support our launch activities in Europe and US, accelerate our sales and marketing activities, expand the organization even further, and support large-scale production. And the magic sauce that will make all of these plans come to real life and executed is the team behind it. And this team of 8 employees in Suturion has a vast experience in medtech, from sourcing, manufacturing, sales, marketing, regulatory, quality. And I know that my best skill as a manager is to build highly functional teams that meet their objectives. Thank you.
Thank you, Pan. And yeah, I see you all remember that you can send questions in via the QR code on page 3. So just another reminder of that. But let's start with some of the questions we have here. How much training would the surgeons need to be able to use the product?
That's a very good question. In the clinical trial right now, they are getting no training. And the reason for that is that when we launch, we want to make sure that the IFU will be enough from a regulatory perspective. But the clinical studies that have been done clearly shows that after 1-2 trials, they will be comfortable with the device. And this is actually what we saw in Tuesday in Boston as well, where we had 8 US surgeons in a lab, and it took them 5 minutes, and then they were comfortable with the device.
And what do they tell you? What comments do you get from the surgeons when they've tried the device?
The comments we get is, first of all, finally something that will help us do this surgical step in a quicker way and save me time. I have always other tasks waiting for me, and I want to move on to them. That's the first comment. Then I also, they also say that this will act as an awareness in the OR for us to understand, oh yes, I need to apply this small bite technique.
So you don't anticipate a huge problem getting surgeons to accept this as a new tool?
Every change in the medtech industry is a little bit of a slow-moving market, but the feedback that we are getting is exceptionally well. I have an experience of plus 20 years in the medtech industry, and I've launched products in Europe many times, and I never received this positive feedback anytime. And there's nothing on today. There's no device, there's no support for surgeons to do this step today.
Because that's another question, actually, if there are any similar products at all targeting the problem. Nothing.
Zero, yeah.
And a very practical question, how much does it weigh?
It's light.
How will you ensure a successful launch?
That's a very good question, because I think the launch success will be very decisive in terms of our future success. Right now, we've been able to gather a good group of key opinion leaders that really support this change. We also will make sure that we focus on the right hospitals, and especially in the US, this will be very, very important that we, in the first phase, have the right type of base of customers to support then an expansion. But I think the key opinion leaders, that's the key critical thing.
And turning a bit to the use of the product, how big would you say the potential is? Could it be used for things other than hernia and so on?
That's another really good question, because again, referring to my visit in Boston this week, the device that we're launching now is only for the abdominal fascia. However, the next development project will be skin, which means that the device can close both the fascia and the abdominal skin, but also skin in other types of procedures, like spine procedures or femoral procedures, which will expand the market opportunity exponentially.
Do you have any more devices in your pipeline?
We have a few prototypes, yes.
Okay. So we'll just have to wait and see?
Yes.
We also have a question. Oh, yeah, someone is asking here, what are the right types of hospitals and surgeons?
Yeah, we will mainly focus in the first phase on hospitals that do colorectal oncology cases. They have very long incisions, and it takes them about 30 minutes to close the abdominal wall. But also advanced gynecological procedures where the incision is up to 40 or even 50 centimeters long. And you have 2 senior surgeons closing from one end each. And that's a total of about an hour of closing of the abdominal wall. So those will be our beachhead to start with. Then you have the hernia surgeons, but that's a very, very niched specialty. And that for us is an open door. They will use this device from day one. But the colorectal and gynecology is definitely the biggest opportunity.
Right. And the final question is, who are your main shareholders, and are they participating in this financing round?
Yes. So we have Almi is one of our shareholders, Elo Holding, and obviously the founder is one of the biggest shareholder. And the majority of all current shareholders are participating in this next financing round.
Well, thank you so much, Pon.
Thank you.
Next up is Senzime and CEO Philip Seberg. Welcome, Philip.
Thank you. Senzime.
Senzime, sorry.
Yeah. Okay, to something a little bit different, but still the same area. So I'm the CEO and I'm one of the co-founders of Senzime. We're in the world of monitoring patients as they undergo anesthesia in the operating room. We are a company, we're a medical device company. We're based in Uppsala, commercial operations in 30 countries, US, Germany being the main markets. The business derives from research at Mayo Clinic and Mass General, Harvard in the US, and that's what we're taking to market. We're on NASDAQ main market and have strong funding behind us. So our main business is all about monitoring the neuromuscular blockade of patients undergoing surgery. So when you're under anesthesia, you put the gas on, not to remember. You get various types of drugs to not get any pain. And then you get a paralytic drug to stay paralyzed, to stay still. And what we do is that we monitor to make sure you get the right amount of paralyzed drugs and that you wake up the patient and extubate them at the right time so they can breathe again. And we've developed what's called a tetrograph system that we're now commercializing around the world. We're targeting about 100 million patients a year, which is our market. And currently, about 30 million of these 100 million patients are having complications because they're woken up too early and get side effects from these paralytic drugs. So we just had the Q3 report this morning. We are in an exciting commercial phase. We're moving into the hockey stick phase. We grew almost threefold. And really what the business is selling monitors and single-use consumables. Strong focus on the US. We expanded our gross margin, ramping up the business in Uppsala, and just secured some good funding. I'll come back to it. So, like I said, we're just seeing this ramp up, and rolling sales are about 30 million right now. By the end of the quarter, we were more tracking around 50 million. And the business is around these monitors, getting them installed in every single operating room around the world. We have about 2,000 just under monitors out there. And once you get them into effect, you have a very nice recurring business model. And you can see to the graph to the right that we're starting to see this effect. The installed base is starting to get the disposable sales of single-use sensors. During the last couple of months, we've had a nice commercial success with strong focus on the US. We've announced 3 key hospital deals. We can't go out with the names, but one is a large university hospital system in Southern California. Another one is a top 10 tier US hospital system in California, the north part. And then we signed a deal with an IDN that covers the whole of US West Coast. And these are big deals for us where we come in with over 100 of these monitors, equipping every single operating room. And then over time, this will create very nice recurring revenue. And really why they are choosing us, we have a couple of competitors, but we are really the market leader in this, is that we are the only company in this space that is publicly traded. So we're seen as kind of the trusted long-term vendor. We have like I said, the Mayo Clinic. We have 40 years of research behind all this. We're seen as kind of the most accurate system out there. This is all powered by an electromyography, so it's a digital algorithm to monitor the effects and understanding the response of your nervous system. And then we have a brilliant commercial team. So once we win these hospital deals, we bring in a big commercial team and clinical with ICU and operating nurses that help to deploy over large scale. And the inflection point for us here has been clinical guidelines. So over the last 10 years, there's been a number of guidelines happening that really triggered a couple of months ago when European and US guidelines came out saying every single patient that receives these paralytic drugs need to be monitored with the type of technique that we have. So since that happened, we've seen that's where the hockey stick effect happened. And for us, it's important to track the utilization rate and make sure we have the top 10 or the top customers around the world, and we have really the leading hospitals on this. So for us, the target is to reach above, so that's used in every single patient. Kind of the median we're seeing is that we want to get up to 4 times a week, so it's basically used almost every day in the operating room. But if we're tracking these key markets with this, which is US and Germany for us, we're seeing that we're already above our targets. So it's almost used every day in the operating room. While we're also seeing that in some operating where they're doing Da Vinci robots, where the patient needs to be very paralyzed and very standstill. There, the tetragraph is used typically twice a day in the operating room. So our challenge here in the commercial phase is how do we get value out of an installed base that is constantly growing, and how do we get a long-term value out of this? So we're working really hard to not just get them installed, but get the protocolized use in the hospitals. And once we get up the recurring revenue, each of these monitors have a revenue opportunity in excess of 50,000 Swedish kronor a year. We're also tracking constantly the number of customers, making sure we win hospitals. At the end of Q3 now, we had about 160 major hospital systems that we are customers, and this is excluding Japan and South Korea and other markets. We also chose about 2 years ago to insource our production. So instead of having it outsourced, we moved it back to Uppsala, and by that we were able to maintain control of supply chain, be leader in sustainability, and also improve gross margin, which is now roughly under 70%. Okay, so during the third quarter, we did 2 directed shares issues on the stock market, where we raised 173 million. We did it in 2 tranches because we saw an upward trend, so it was nicest for the shareholders to do a smaller one and then a larger one. But we did these 2, directed them to Swedish institutions. We did them at market pricing, so no discounts. And the key shareholders that came in were Carnegie Funds, Handelsbanken, AP4, Swedbank Robur, and Segula Medical Acceleration, which is a medical device-focused fund. So we also have about 10, 12, 13% of our shareholders in the US. So we will be cross-listed as of probably the next couple of days in the US. So the US market, we can attract US investors better. But really the equation here, my magic equation for creating value in this company is what I call the 300 equation. If we can move, I said we had about 160 hospitals. If we can move this to 300, and we have a nice trajectory, and we get each of these hospitals to have 30 monitors that we have, they use them 4 times a week, that correlates for us to about 300 million SEK in just consumable sales. So that's kind of where we're, the guidelines and the guidance that we've given to the market is that in 2025, we should have net revenues kind of in that range, and also long-term have an EBITDA margin of excess of 40%. So wrapping up, I've been in several medical device companies, and this is such an exciting phase because we're in the midst of this new clinical marker. It's now well established after 40 years, and the clinical guidelines is just pulling this. So we're really creating something new here, and I have the Crafoord family here from Lund as our largest shareholder base, and this is a mission to create the next Gambro. So thank you very much.
Thank you. There's a lot of interest in the US side of things here.
Yes.
So I think we'll start there. How do you experience deal-making situations in the US? Have you bumped into any cultural hurdles, or maybe overcome some hurdles?
Yeah, the classic Swedish hurdles, where Swedish companies say they're going to focus everything on the US, but they end up focusing everything on the hospital next to their office. So we've really taken a big chunk of, we have half of our team in the US. I have part of the leadership team there, which is heavily expensive. Sweden is really a low labor cost country nowadays. So it's been a long journey, and it's a different mindset of marketing and sales in the US versus Sweden. So that's kind of my constant operational challenge, and becoming Americanized, because that's where the business is.
How are you working on becoming Americanized? How do you do that?
No, I think it's just it's always finding the right team, and getting the focus and sticking to the focus. So we decided, for example, in Scandinavia, we're having a distributor. I don't want to start selling here because I'll get distracted. So yeah, that's been the trick here.
What is your marketing strategy to reach the 300 hospitals that you need to reach your goal?
Yeah. I mean, we do a lot of, I've tried to make a very digital approach, because now that the guidelines are there, physicians and anesthesiologists, they are Googling after what type of technology out there. So one of our simple goals is to be number one on Google. So just trying to do this different. Yes, we attended a fantastic anesthesia meeting in the US last week, but we need, as a medical device world, we need to find other ways of reaching the customers. It's too expensive. So taking on a very digital approach, using social media and all kinds of routes to find the business.
If we return to the more scientific side of things, could you talk a little bit more about how these patients are monitored today without the use of your product?
So it's different in Europe and in the US. In the US, they are monitored manually, or they're monitored with a small little electrical shock. But the biggest competitors here is anesthesiologists who give these drugs, and they just kind of lift the head and say, Philip, are you okay? Are you awake? Is the drug out of your body? And then they pull out the tube, and they wake up, and then I end up in the post-operative care with all kinds of respiratory issues, of which a small percentage actually die. While in Europe, they already have an analog technique out there. It's an analog technique for giving us a small little electrical pulse, and then you measure how is your thumb mechanically moving. So there I have a different type of, it's a competition versus digital to analog, while in the US it's doing nothing to digital. So it's almost like NMT to 3G, and then in US it's from analog phones to 5G. Yeah.
I have another technological question here, whether or not the technology can be incorporated into the anesthesia machine.
Yes, yeah. So we have partnerships. We work with Massimo, we work with Philips, where we can plug it into their system so it gets to the machine. And then ultimately the goal here is, because these types of products, they move into the anesthesia machines and the patient monitors. And I see over time, all these nice little cool handheld portable things in the operating room, they move into an integrated solution. So, but a couple of years ahead, but we're working on it.
We will end with some more financial questions here. Of the total sales, how large a percentage is derived from US versus Germany?
So US right now is about 2/3 of our business. It will, in our business plan, probably be 75 to 80% going forward.
And finally then, how much money have you raised in the last 5 years?
A lot of money. Probably about 500 million Swedish kronor, roughly. So it is an expensive business we're in. This is what it takes to really hit the market. A lot of hard work, and we went on NASDAQ main market 2021, and then we were on First North before that, then we were on Spotlight. So we've done the journey, and long-term committed shareholders is the key to success. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Philip.
Thank you.
And normally I would ask you to leave the stage, but I won't, because Philip is actually up next.
Sorry about this. I'm sorry.
For another company, for Acarix, this time in the capacity as chairman of the board of Acarix. So please go ahead again.
Okay, thank you. And I'm here because I'm stand-in for our CEO. She's off on oncology treatment, and then we have a stand-in CEO, and he's based in the US. So to something different, but sort of in the same space. This is about cardiology, and a Swedish company called Acarix. We're traded on First North Premier. We have our head office in Malmö, but also development site in Denmark. So Acarix is addressing one of the most common reasons for visiting the doctor, which is chest pains. Every day in the world, there's about 1 million patients that somehow seek health care for just various types of chronic or acute chest pains. And this happens to pretty much 30% of the population. And typically, what chest pains is that it can be a sign of coronary artery disease, but in the absolute vast majority, more than 90% of the instances, it's not. It's just related to stress and other types of comorbidity factors. But typically what happens is that when I come in with a chest pain, I will be ordinated through a clinical pathway that can take weeks of invasive, imaging, various types of procedures to find out that, Philip, the chest pain that you had was absolutely nothing. So what we've developed is a point-of-care, AI-based with acoustics to very rapidly, within a couple of minutes, figure out with very high precision, is this chest pain that you feel, is it a coronary blockage or not? So how it works is that you put the disposable sensor on the chest, and then it listens to your flows in your coronary arteries. It does this for a couple of minutes. It uses machine learning and AI to calculate the flow and understand, are we hearing turbulence or not? Or is it a clean flow? So then the physician can very quickly get a score to understand, okay, Philip, you're just having chest pains again because you've been working and drinking too much coffee. Or, send them on for further evaluation. So this is based on about 15 years of R&D, mostly sprung out of Denmark. There's about 45 patents around this. It's CE marked and also de novo FDA cleared in the US. Classic business model where the device is sold to physicians, and then there's a single-use patch which creates the nice gross margin of roughly 80%. The trick is to get this into clinics, which is typically urgent care. It could be doctor's offices and also emergency centers sometimes. The lifetime value, once you get this in, the lifetime value of a device exceeds $75,000 in the US market. And that is just calculating on one patient a day. When we're seeing clinics now in the US, they have so many people sitting in the waiting room and just, I have a chest pain, and what do I do with these patients? So this gives the patient an immediate response, and it gives the physician an immediate response. So thanks to this, we were granted a CPT-3 reimbursement code in 2022 for the US market. And the positioning here, we worked with the ACC, which is the American College of Cardiology. We worked with them to help define how does this fit into the US market? Where is the pathway? So they helped us to create like this triage tree here saying that, okay, whenever anybody comes in with chest pain, take an EKG and then take an Acarix CAD score. Those are the kind of main first targets to do. And then depending on the patient, whatever it finds, and yes, there are some exclusions where the patient has comorbidities and is above 70 years old, but in the vast majority, you can do this very quickly. And then you can find out, okay, Philip, you can go home, you're fine, or send on the patient for more classic diagnostic procedures. And this pathway and these products are now used within customers in the US. I'll come back to it. So we started by commercializing this in Europe. We went into Germany and Scandinavia. Nice, good early commercialization. Took ages, no reimbursement, expensive, trying to convince German physicians to do something different without, It was a good way to learn, but it's not a way to make shareholders happy. So we just decided 2 years ago, let's just focus on the US. And the US is nice because there are, millions of patients that need this. We have the FDA clearance, we have the reimbursement code, and we have the support from this ACC to get this out. So we started by building, and I assigned and we put the CEO in the US to mark the importance of it. So in about a year and a half, we've gone to basically nothing to now have 40 sales reps covering the US market. It's a hybrid type of sales model, so we're not really paying for these sales reps. They are independent reps, and they get commission, and we own the full P&L of the customer. Where we focus mostly is in the Veterans Affairs Administrations, the VA. VA is the largest independent healthcare provider in the US, with 178 or 180 medical centers, 170, sorry. And we've scored the first deal with one of these VAs, and we're having discussions with multiple of them now across the US. And there's a lot of veterans that have these types of issues, so it fits perfectly into that system. We are also working with smaller clinics, and we are, a CPT-3 code is nice, but it also requires that you negotiate the payment levels with each payment provider. So it takes time, but we have now taken payer after payer after payer in each state to confirm, and typically what this pays is somewhere between $110 and $600 to the provider. So we charge $75 for the single-use patch, and then the doctor can bill up to $600. So there's a nice, we make some money, and most importantly, probably the physician makes money, because that's what drives US business. Okay, super sharp team, of course, based here, as I said, Malmö, US mix, and a board of directors. The star here is Marlou Jansen. She is Dutch. She used to be the president of Biotronic in the US and knows exactly how to make this happen. We also, this is expensive business like we all have. We just closed a financing round of 54 million, our classic rights issue, classic discounts. But we got decent, good subscription, and we got a very exciting, good Danish life science fund that came in. So we've gone from a very retail-based First North world to getting now finally an anchor investor in. So I'm very excited about getting that in. Okay, wrapping up. This is a very groundbreaking clinical solution that really meets a market need, and it's de-risked. There's like 25,000 patients that have gone through this, and it's a commercial phase and a commercial challenge as well. But now I think we have everything in place. We have the financials in place, and it's like everything else, it's just making it happen. Thank you.
Thank you again. Picking up on the investor side that you were talking about there, could you elaborate a little bit on why this anchor investor is so important?
Because we've had 5, 6, 7,000 retail investors into this, which has been a very good start, very important. But we've lacked kind of a good somebody who comes in and believes in the long term, and somebody who can come in and defend when more money is needed. And it's hard work. There's not many out there. We used to have Seed Capital, which is a Danish, but they slowed down their business and we lost them. So we're in the classic phase. We have a market cap of about 150 million Swedish kronor, and nobody really just wants to come in and say, okay, I'll be the main shareholder here, take all the responsibility. So you've got to grow that over time. Yeah.
Could you also provide some insights into the strategic decision to shift your full commercial focus to the US market? This is a decision you made late 2022, right? Yeah.
No, we did it for several reasons. We saw that this is going to take too much time in Europe. And then very quickly we got the US reimbursement. We said that's where the upside is. It was a discussion with investors as well who just said, skip Europe. Keep it on hybrid, keep it running, but go all in. So for us, it's a challenging phase right now because the European business is still running okay, but it's kind of slowing down while the US is taking off. So we're in the inflection point that the growth we can't really see the growth yet, but the US is doubling in speed right now, and we're going to get there. So that's what we did. Yeah.
So how will you build a cost-effective and comprehensive geographic sales organization in the US? What's the plan?
No, so we started by hiring a couple of sales reps, and quickly saw that this is too expensive for us. And then we signed an agreement with a cardiology sales group called Complemed, and they had 40 sales reps already selling pacemakers and other things, so they were already in this world and just could bring on another product. And like I said, they sell, we pay them commission, and we own the customer and we own the full gross margin.
Moving on to some more product-specific questions. First of all, are there any similar products out there?
No, there isn't, which is challenging. Yeah, I'd love to have some good competitors. Yeah.
And do you always need to have an EKG check in combination with your product?
No, you don't. Not at all. It's just that EKG has been, it's since the Nobel Prize of it's kind of the de facto standard, so everybody gets it. Right. So it's checking the electronics, and this is checking the mechanics. So that's why it's a good combination. There's no interference between them.
Right.
Yeah.
Could you talk a bit about the specificity and sensitivity?
Yeah. So the sensitivity here is very high, but the specificity is very low. And we are working to increase the specificity, but this is not yet a kind of a screening device for the mass public. It's more to rule out. That's why we're working on the specificity side. We need hundreds of thousands of data points to be able to ultimately improve the specificity. But there is enough business case in running on the rule out side. But the ultimate vision is that everybody can just be screened in 10 minutes to see if they have potential blockage in the heart. Yeah.
And returning to the US, what does reimbursement in the US really mean? At what level is the reimbursement? Is it specific healthcare providers and so on?
Yeah.
If you could just elaborate.
So when you get a CPT3 code, you don't get a specific payment. You only get the right for providers to bill, so there's a code. So then they send in a bill and say, hey, I've used the CAD score device, and then they just bill. They just make up a number. And then it's up to the insurance provider to pay whatever they think is rational. So then you send in like a justification deck. And that's why there's a spread in the amount. And then once you've proven over a few years, that you find some kind of a median payment level for this, you can then apply for a CPT1 code. And then you get like a national CMS-based reimbursement coverage. So new technologies come in via CPT3, which is reasonably easy, I have to say. So I can recommend it to everybody who's trying. But then you have the hard work of setting the payment levels. But you got to start somewhere. And there's a lot of companies in the US who've built a very successful business on just doing CPT3. And then once they get a CPT1, they actually lower the rates. So it's a balance of how you want to go with that.
Yes, because there is actually a question here about what your roadmap looks like, moving from CPT3 to 1.
But that is the roadmap. So, but you need like a whole comprehensive bag of payment evidence and showing the billing history. And ultimately, CPT1 codes typically require some kind of a US clinical study. But we've also learned that if you can prove that the business case is established, that is an alternative to a big, fancy, expensive study. We are, absolutely, ultimately. But my best guess, without saying too much, is probably going to take 3 to 5 years.
Would that include developing US clinical data?
We'll have clinical data on the way, but I don't foresee us doing any type of expensive studies to do it. Yeah. But when we started this endeavor, we thought we would have to pay like 30 million Swedish kronor for a US study to get to CPT1, and that we don't believe anymore.
Right. Thank you so much, Philip. Now we will let you off stage.
Thank you. Sorry for being here.
And we will let Jamal El-Mosleh, the CEO of Elicera Therapeutics, on the stage. Welcome, Jamal.
Thank you. So Elicera Therapeutics is a cell and gene therapy company with roots from Uppsala University. You see 2 of the co-founders here, Professor Magnus Sand and his research colleague DU. They have, together with their research team, developed 2 CAR T-cell therapies, 2 oncolytic virus therapies, and also 1 universal CAR T-cell arming technology we call iTank. We published preclinical proof of concept data for the iTank technology in Nature Biomedical Engineering last year. And this year we published preclinical data for our solid tumor CAR T program in GBM in Nature Communications. The company is listed on Nasdaq First North. We have a market cap of around 100 million today, and we have cash runway that lasts 2024 out. This is a pipeline picture. The iTank platform, you can say, is the backbone of most of our programs. So we have the iTank arming in 301, 401, 201, but not in ELC 100, which is an oncolytic virus currently being developed in neuroendocrine tumors. Taking them one by one, ELC 301 is our CAR T program in B-cell lymphoma. We received a large grant from the EIC Accelerator Fund of 2.5 million euros last year to support an upcoming clinical trial. So we have already received a conditional approval from the Medical Projects Agency to start a trial in B-cell lymphoma, and we expect to treat the first patient in the beginning of next year. ELC401 we've developed against a target that is overexpressed in a number of solid tumors, but initially we have developed this specifically for glioblastoma. ELC201 is what we call a next-generation oncolytic virus. It's armed with the ITANK platform, but also with an additional immune-stimulating factor to really kickstart a bystander immune response. And ELC100, even though it doesn't contain the ITANK arming, we have developed this oncolytic virus specifically for treatment of neuroendocrine tumors. We have an ongoing clinical study, a dose escalation trial in 12 patients. We have treated 11 out of 12 patients, so we have 1 patient left to treat before we can close this part of the study. And we expect to recruit the last remaining patient hopefully during this year. Now, talking about CAR T-cell therapies, what is it? So CAR T-cell therapy, you can say, is a new type of immuno-oncology. So immuno-oncology is a vast space of different methods and therapies to use the patient's own immune system to treat cancer, basically. And CAR T-cell therapies have been shown to be very promising, especially in the treatment of different types of blood cancer. So what CAR T-cells can do is that they can efficiently identify and kill cancer cells, and they can also survive in the body for long periods of time, helping to counteract recurrences and metastasis, which is, of course, a big problem in oncology. So what you do normally in CAR T-cell therapy is that you extract T-cells from the patient, you genetically modify them so that they express a chimeric antigen receptor, or a CAR molecule, on its surface. You expand them in test tube and you re-inject them into the patient. And the idea is then that this CAR molecule will recognize a certain target on the tumor cell, so they will scan the body and they will target all of the cells that carry this specific target. This has worked extremely well in different types of hematological or different types of blood cancer. You see the first patient that was treated with a CAR T-cell therapy and was followed up last year after 10 years of having underwent the treatment, and he was tumor-free and he had an active immune system against cancer. The same situation for the child that you see here in the right corner, also had a diagnosis that wasn't able to treat with any other treatments. She got a CAR T-cell therapy, and 10 years later she was still tumor-free, considered cured with an active immune system against cancer. And this shows you the great potential that these types of therapies have. But so far, you only have approved CAR T-cell therapies, 6 different ones, in hematological cancers. And obviously, the biggest unmet medical need and the biggest proportion of cancers belong to solid tumors, 90%. So this is really where we need to make some new advancements in order to get these therapies approved also in this area. And this is what we believe that we can help to do with our ITANK platform, and I will describe how shortly. You can see from this slide also that most of the programs under development globally are still in preclinical phase. A lot of them are in phase 1, but relatively few are in phase 2 and onwards. Meaning that even though there are 6 approved CAR T-cell therapies, this is still what you can consider a early development for these types of therapies. And this also gives Elicera a lot of partnering opportunities, since the ITANK platform basically could be used to arm any CAR T-cell under development. And the earlier we can come in to offer these to other CAR T-cell developers, the better. So how come this works in blood cancer but not in solid tumors? Well, there are 2 major challenges that CAR T-cell therapies face in treatment of solid tumors that they don't face in treatment of blood cancer. In solid tumors, it's very difficult to find a target that is overexpressed on all tumor cells. So the CAR T-cells will effectively kill all the cells that carry these antigen targets. But if a tumor cell doesn't carry the antigen target, it will not be attacked by the CAR T-cell. It will form a metastasis that isn't able to treat with CAR T-cell therapies. This is a major problem you have in solid tumors, which you don't have in blood cancer. Another major issue is that in a solid tumor situation, you have a very immunosuppressive tumor microenvironment that directly suppresses the immune system and counteracts the effectiveness of the CAR T-cells. You don't have this issue in blood cancer. Also, looking at B-cell lymphoma, which is considered a blood cancer, even though CAR T-cells are very effective in this indication, about half of the patients relapse, and when they do, they often lack the target antigen, meaning that they can't continue to be treated with CAR T-cell therapies. So the iTank technology is really what differentiates Elicera from other companies in this space. You can say that CAR T-cell therapies have been developed in different generations. First generation were shown to be quite poor, so they were improved in second, third, and then fourth generation. And what differs fourth generation CAR T-cells from the other ones is that a fourth generation CAR T-cell contains a genetic modification. You basically insert a transgene that codes for an immune-stimulating substance. Usually it's a cytokine, and usually you only use one, in some cases two. And this can trigger the immune system. The difference with what we're doing with the iTank platform is that we are not coding for a cytokine. We're coding for a bacterial-derived protein from Helicobacter pylori. This is a neutrophil activating protein, which we short is NAP here. So what happens when this bacterial-derived protein is released is that it will kickstart a pro-inflammatory reaction that contains over 20 different immune-stimulating substances. And we believe that these many different substances together can collaborate to more optimally activate the immune system against cancer. So we published preclinical proof of concept data for this iTank platform in Nature Biomedical Engineering last year. There we could show a broad attack on multiple targets. We can show that we can create a, so to speak, immunologically cold tumor into an immunologically hot tumor, which is exactly what you're after in immuno-oncology. We can show more efficient and durable responses for our iTank-armed CAR T-cells when treating mice in comparison to conventional unarmed CAR T-cells. And very importantly also, adding the iTank platform doesn't add any toxicity, so it doesn't make these therapies any worse, so to speak. And we also have data indicating that this is universally applicable to any CAR T-cell. So it's agnostic to what target you have or what other modifications you've done to your CAR T-cell therapy. So this is what this slide is trying to highlight here, that we can use this platform and offer it to any CAR T company out there developing their own programs. You can just add this and make them basically next fourth generation CAR T cells. So the iTank business model is to license this on a non-exclusive basis and or enter co-development partnerships with other CAR T developers. And this also means that we have what we call a hybrid business model for Elicera, where we, on the one hand, develop in-house drug development programs, where we invest substantial resources into these programs with the aim to ultimately license them after hopefully having reached clinical proof of concept. In some cases, we're open to do that in preclinical phase. But the point is that these programs, we aim to generate higher revenue streams, higher upfront payments than you could perhaps expect from an iTank licensing. However, the iTank licensing, there we expect to have recurrent revenue streams. So we expect to be able to license this many times to different CAR T developers. The study that we have planned in our first CAR T study is in B-cell lymphoma. We call it the KARMA study. It's in total of 18 patients we will treat. First 12 patients will be in a dose escalation phase, the last 6 in maximum tolerable dose. We expect to treat the first patient in the beginning of next year and have the first data report from the first 12 patients in the second half of 2025. And we expect this to be a significant value inflection point for Elicera and also something that will help us in our partnering discussions. And also the ongoing clinical trial that we have in neuroendocrine tumors with our oncolytic virus. It's a study that is supported financially in full by a neuroendocrine tumor foundation, so it doesn't cost Elicera anything. It was set up by Vince Hamilton, who you see here in a picture, and his family, who is running the foundation today. And as I mentioned before, we've treated 11 out of 12 patients. We haven't seen any adverse effects, and we've actually seen some signs of promising clinical activity already in this dose escalation trial. And we have an approval to move into phase 2 to treat an additional 12 patients with maximum tolerable dose. I think I've overspent my time here, so I will say thank you so much for listening and open up for questions.
Thank you, Jamal. Well, we have a couple of questions for you here. One is about the general field of cancer therapy, stating that within cancer therapy, immunotherapy seems to be at the forefront of innovation. You could take issue with that if you want, I guess. Is cell and gene therapy going to disrupt that perception?
I think there's a lot of expectations on cell and gene therapy because you have many different opportunities to use that type of therapy to treat cancer. And we're excited to be developing 2 different types of therapies here, both oncolytic viruses and CAR T-cell therapies. We have a little bit more focus on the CAR T-cells, that side today. But I really hope that today I've been able to clarify and really show that the iTank platform is what we consider the backbone of our different programs here.
There's also a question asking you to elaborate a little bit on both the challenges and the possibilities of working in such a new treatment field.
I mean, I would say that the challenge is that this is quite unique. It's always good if you can show other examples of similar technologies. It's always easier to convince potential partners of the value of it. We're very happy to have published the preclinical proof of concept data in Nature Biomedical Engineering last year. That opens up a lot of doors for us. It shows us that the level of science is on a quite high level. But this is quite unique. So we've actually only found one other company that developed something similar, a Japanese company that has a similar platform that they've been able to license on multiple occasions on a non-exclusive basis. So we hope to be able to replicate that and have the same model.
And there's also a question about if there's anything similar out there that's being used for already approved drugs, but there's...
Not for the approved ones. So the majority of CAR T cells under development today belong to 2nd generation. Very few are being developed as 4th generation, and we believe that most of the ones that are being developed as 4th generation are being developed in academia. Very few companies that we know of have a similar technology.
How come?
It's a field where you constantly learn, and you constantly learn from others, and this field is evolving, and I think more and more people will look into these types of technologies. So I expect that, of course, we will not be the only ones doing something along these lines going forward. But right now, we believe that we are in the forefront in this specific area of arming CAR T cells, and we hope to be able to capitalize on that.
And as a final question then, do you only want to focus on solid tumors, or will you continue in the field of blood cancers as well?
So we're targeting CD20 in B-cell lymphoma, and B-cell lymphoma in itself contains different subgroups of patients. There might be a plan, depending on what data we gather from the upcoming trial, where we choose maybe to focus on a specific subgroup. It's difficult to say that now. But besides that, no, I think that the solid tumor area is more interesting. We will start with glioblastoma, aggressive forward brain cancer, but this target that we know is overexpressed in glioblastoma, we also believe is overexpressed in a number of other solid tumors. So down the line, there could be an opportunity to broaden the pipeline also within that area. Yes.
Well, thank you so much, Herman.
Thank you. Thank you.
Our last presenter of this session, Sprint Bioscience, and CEO Johan Emilsson.
Thank you very much. I'm really happy to be here today to present Sprint Bioscience on my day 26 as CEO of the company. So I will do my best to represent the company in a good way. And so for those of you who do not know Sprint Bioscience, we've been around now. We just celebrated our 14th birthday. We're listed on First North, and we are located at just in close proximity to Karolinska in Huddinge. So I'll give you an introduction to what we're doing. So we are a company that is primarily focused on small molecules targeting oncology, and we're operating in the discovery phase. We have in our site in Huddinge, we have 2 primary groups. So we have a very capable biology group, and we have a chemistry group, which works very closely together. So biology group works on identifying very relevant targets by continuously monitoring the literature and the scientific community. And then we have our chemistry groups that works with fragment-based drug discovery to create molecules that will target these targets. This will then be going back to the biology group to validate that these targets are relevant and our molecules works. Then we work pretty early with our licensing deals, and this is maybe a little bit different compared to other companies. So we do our licensing deals very early. We rarely go into the GXP area, but we find licensing partners already in the discovery phase. So this is more to describe a little bit better our business model. So where we work is finding novel targets. We're finding good lead drug candidates, and then we partner early, where we find partners already in preclinical phase, where we normally get an upfront payment. Then we continuously, then of course, get the development milestones, and then we get royalties upon market success. But we also have a little bit of a different, our latest deal was, additional a little bit different to that. So one of the major milestones that we had in Q3 was this deal. So we managed to license one of our products, what we call the VADA program, which is a molecule targeting VK1. We managed to license this to a company called Day One Biopharmaceuticals in the US. So this made it possible for us to get an upfront of $3 million. But equally important, it also was a little bit different compared to the deals we did previously. So what happened, what this deal is that we will continue to work together with Day One. So historically, we essentially gave the opportunity for another partner to continue to develop the program. But in this one, it's a little bit different in the sense that we continue to work together with Day One to progress this project forward towards the IND-enabling tox studies. So this has generated a different way for us also to generate revenues in the sense that they will also fund our development activities going forward. And considering the current landscape for funding, this also means that we essentially have secured funding for the next 2 years by being able to work together with our partner. It also means that we can also focus on to continue to develop the other internal programs we have in the company. Being able to work closely together with Day One also makes it possible for us to lower the operational risk. So the VADA deal, and together with the VPS34 deal that we have done with the Deciphera in the US, constitutes the two partnered products we have in our portfolio. On top of that, we have another 4 projects that has been officially communicated. And to that, we have yet a couple of products that is currently running in-house that we're looking forward to as soon as they mature enough to also disclose to the market. I will quickly mention 2 of the projects and show you a little bit on how we're thinking when we're working in this field. So we're working, if you look and try to segment the area, we have kind of the immune oncology space of it. We have modulators for the microenvironment, but we also have modulators for tumor metabolism. We have 2 very interesting programs in this space. One of them being DISA and one of them being NEMA. So if you look at them a little bit more in detail, so the DISA program is a way where we see that we can be playing a part in modulating the response to immunotherapy, and we're specifically targeting the TREX1 target. And it's been shown that upregulation of TREX1 is involved in immunotherapy resistance. So by being able to target TREX1, it's been shown that you could increase the immune cell infiltration and also have a better response to different kind of immunotherapies, but we also see other benefits of using this pathway. The other one is NEMA, which is then more of a multi-tool in tumor growth mechanisms. We see this as an opportunity to work as a monotherapy, but we also see that there are good ways of using this in combination therapies for immunotherapy and for cytostatic treatment. So very quickly on the where we're operating, I think it was mentioned earlier today as well, when you look a little bit on where the deals happen. And if you look 14 years back and you were looking at how deals were made in that time, you were very much seeing most of the deals being made post-phase 1, post-phase 2A in the proof of concept stage. But what we've seen over the last couple of years is this kind of environment is changing. Many of the big companies are not investing as much as they did historically on the discovery phase. There is a need to fuel the pipeline with new innovation. And we see that we have a very interesting market space to operate in. So we can now see that even more and more is happening in the early space. And we see that we have generated a platform and a way of working that is relevant for the market. So, and we see this is now happening also in the discussions we're having, especially post the day one deal. We see that it's now starting to resonate in the market. And we're looking forward to be able to fill that space. So just quickly to recap, we have a unique, very interesting way of working within the company. We have this very close collaboration between the biologist and the chemist. They are literally sitting meters from each other and working closely on a daily basis, which means that we can be very quick in the way we're turning things around. We've proven that we can actually make deals with this business model. We've also proven we can actually do deals in a very, very early stage with a good valuation of our products. And we have a strong pipeline, and we're looking forward to expand that even further. So with that, I'm open for questions.
Thank you, Johan. So there's some questions here about the deal with Day One, and why do you continue to work with Day One, which, like you said, is different from how you usually do deals?
Well, I think you have to look a little bit on the capabilities on the different partners, and of course, in this sense, I think we complement Day One in a very nice way. So we have capabilities that they do not have, and of course, later on when this moves further towards the clinic, of course, they will have capabilities that we don't have. But I think it's a very nice win-win situation in the sense that we can continue to work on it, we can de-risk it in the sense that we can be very proactive in the collaboration. And then, and be able to build on that relationship. So now it's a nice way of continuing that collaboration.
But is it to be seen as a sign that you will change the way you do deals, or this is an outlier?
I mean, I think it's a nice framework for how you can do it, but then you have to recognize that every deal is different, right? So yes, of course, if I can do more deals like this, I would be very happy, but I would also accept that there will be other terms and conditions to be met in those discussions.
And you've stated in the quarterly report that you're doing a review of the company as a whole in the hope of sharpening the strategy further. When can we expect news on this sharpening of the strategy?
That's a very good question. So, I mean, we're working on it now. I spent now, well, almost a month getting to know the company. I see some really good things. I see some things that there are room for improvement, which would be true for any company. So now I'll give it a little bit more time until I comment on when we can see changes.
So like you mentioned here, you are very new. I was going to say relatively new, but very new as CEO. What attracted you to Sprint Bioscience?
Well, Sprint Bioscience, first and foremost, for me, had a very attractive portfolio of products. I found it very interesting to see a company that had a width of products, and and truth be told, coming into company, I would say also I've been amazed by the scientific capabilities. I thought it was good going in, and I can just conclude it's better being in.
Right. So that's what's good with Sprint. So what's good about you? What do you bring to Sprint?
Okay, I didn't think this was a pitch for me. Fair enough. And I think hopefully I can bring some international experience. I spent the last 10 years working for an international company, having the opportunity to work across the globe with different kind of everything from the US to Asia to South America to Europe. And I hope, and what I'm looking forward to do as well is kind of bring that international perspective and bringing it back home to Sweden. So that's something I hope I can bring to the table.
There's been some recent repossessions of assets. Can you elaborate or talk a little bit about how they have affected Sprint Bioscience?
I mean, I think that's kind of the nature of this business as well, and being operating in this very early space. So no, but they have progressed, they have generated new data, and I'm looking forward to be able to get them fully back into our hands and be able to kind of look how we can utilize those assets in the best way.
And that's part of this maybe sharpening of the strategy that you're
may or may not be.
May or may not be. Another question that you may or may not be able to answer then, how are you thinking in terms of any new programs that might potentially be coming up?
I mean, we're looking at it. And as I think briefly mentioned as well, we have a portfolio of things that, of course, haven't been disclosed because we're looking at these projects. I mean, as I said, I think very early, we're constantly looking into the market, kind of what's happening, what's new in the literature. So, of course, we are constantly looking into these targets and kind of building and prototyping around them. But then we, of course, need to see that it's the right target, it has the right market potential, and it also, of course, can generate an appropriate return to our shareholders.
And as a final question then, you mentioned shareholders there. What can they expect from Sprint Bioscience in the near term?
I think they can expect, we released the report yesterday. I think it showed at least a direction of where we're going, that the model works, that we can do good deals, also considering the current situation, and our expectation is to continue to do that. So I think that's what they should expect.
Thank you so much, Johan.
Thank you very much.